Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily. We're here today with Tom Litchford, VP Retail Technologies for the National Retail Federation, and Suzie Squier, Senior VP Member Services for the Retail Industry Leaders Association. Over the last few years, the retail industry in the U.S. has been under attack from hackers and organized criminal cyber gangs from all over the world. Not a day goes by that the nation doesn't hear about another cyber attack. With over 100 million credit and debit cards being stolen and credit card fraud skyrocketing, we thought it was critical to bring together the two associations that their leaders are leading the efforts to fight this epidemic on behalf of the retail industry. Over the last year, both the NRF and RILA have been tirelessly working together and separately to establish efforts to help fight this new crime wave that's sweeping our nation. Last January, the NRF formed a permanent CIO Council Committee, the IT Security Council, that Tom Litchford here with us today leads. This committee provides a forum for retail security leaders to collaborate and exchange information, develop and share industry best practices and key components of an effective security plan and policy, and also to educate federal lawmakers on what is needed to combat data theft, breaches, and the resulting fraud that occurs. The IT Security Council is managed by an executive committee that oversees three primary objectives: networking and collaboration, education and research, and policy and advocacy. The NRF IT Security Council is an invitation-only committee made up of retailing's leading technology security experts. With more than 180 members, the council provides a forum for networking, collaboration, and exchange of information, and is tasked with developing the industry best practices and key components for an effective security and risk management network, or I should say framework. It also assists the NRF as a voice on Capitol Hill to educate lawmakers on what is needed to combat data theft and the resulting fraud that occurs. This past July, the NRF also hired a leading industry executive, Paul Martino, to lead the public policy efforts on privacy, data security, and related issues on Capitol Hill. RILA has its CIO Leaders Council made of the CIOs from the leading retailers in the country. The council meets semi-annually to not only benchmark against one another, but to discuss leading issues as well, such as who's going to own the wallet and how to develop and maintain a culture of innovation within information systems. In addition, RILA brought together the leading chief information security officers early in 2014 to discuss a response to the cyber attacks. Together, the group determined the answer needed to be an industry-based, not solely for one trade association. As a result, the industry came together to launch the Retail Cyber Intelligence Sharing Center, known as R-CISC. RILA, the NRF, and the American Apparel and Footwear Association have been driving this R-CISC along with its board of directors. The Retail Cyber Intelligence Sharing Center, R-CISC, is the cybersecurity resource for the retail industry, providing another tool in the retailer's arsenal against cyber attacks. Through the R-CISC, retailers of all sizes share cyber intelligence information on incidents, threats, vulnerabilities, and associated threat remediation. The Retail Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the ISAC, brings retailers together for omnidirectional sharing of actionable cyber threat intelligence and functions as a conduit for retailers to receive threat information from government entities and other cyber intelligence sources. It also focuses on education and training by working with retailers and partners to develop and provide both education and training to empower information security professionals in retail and related industries. It drives research and looks to the future, undertaking research and development projects in partnership with academia, thought leaders, and subject matter experts in order to better understand threats on the horizon. Together, these components will help the retail companies enhance their capabilities to protect their enterprises and their customers. The R-CISC journey began in March of 2014 when more than 30 retail companies came together within the retail trade associations to discuss developing a way for retailers to share threat intelligence with one another. The goal was to create an information sharing and analysis center for the retail industry. The R-CISC was unveiled in May, and in June, retailers began sharing threat intelligence among themselves with analyst support and with feeds from the NCCIC, the FBI, and other government sources. In September, the R-CISC Board of Directors presented the membership criteria, dues structure, and benefits to the retail industry. And in October, they began the search for an executive director. Membership in the R-CISC is open to retailers and merchants of all segments and sizes. Due to the nature of the retail industry, the board ensured that membership dues would allow retailers of all sizes to reap the benefits brought by the power of the retail industry. In September, RILA also announced the hiring of Nicholas Aherns as their Vice President of Privacy and Cybersecurity. Aherns will lead RILA's privacy and data security agenda and serve as the lead advocate to the government on cybersecurity, privacy, data security, and related issues. Ladies and gentlemen, never before have we seen such a crime wave hit our nation and our industry. And the top two trade associations are responding. And they're leading the way in fighting this both together and separately. And with that, I'd like to welcome both Suzie and Tom and thank them for taking the time to meet with us today.
Thanks, guys.
You know, Tom, can you tell us more about your IT Security Council's efforts in the NRF threat alert system?
Sure, absolutely. I think you've covered quite a bit there in that intro. But yeah, we recognized early on working with the Security Council that probably one of the most effective means to combating this crime wave was to share information amongst each other. Mm-hmm. So with that, it's kind of easy. I mean, we're up against some pretty sophisticated criminals mm-hmm. here, or bad actors, we sometimes refer to them as. And you know, as a pessimist, when you hear some experts in the industry saying things like, well, they have to be right one time, we have to be right 100% of the time. You know, I'm like, nuts. What we've got to do is say, look, we need to turn this around, stop being pessimist about it, and become optimist and start hunting. And we're going to become the hunters. And the way to do that is through some of this threat information sharing. Mm-hmm. And so with that, NRF launched its threat alert system. And we've partnered with the areas you talked about. So FS-ISAC is a key partner of ours there, the financial services ISAC. U.S. governments, agencies we're partnering with, and then also the private sector security companies. We receive a lot of information from them. And we push these alerts out somewhere in the range of 12 to 15, 12 to 16 alerts per day. That include anything from a cyber incident to a cyber threat to a vulnerability or even a resolution so that we can go fix some of our systems. And with that, what we're trying to do is make sure that the information is out there for all of NRF's 18,000 members at a basic level that's a free service provided to them. And we know this is making an impact because back in July, for example, we issued a level 8 critical alert on the backoff malware, so partnering with the U.S. Secret Service. And within a day, one of our members had called and said, we got that alert, we've been breached, and ultimately they were able to mitigate that breach to less than 1% of their stores. So that's a huge win that shows this information sharing is critical. So with that, that's the basic service we offered, and then as you mentioned, we've partnered with RILA for the more advanced services that will ultimately become the R-CISC. So with that, I'll let
Suzie,
I'll take your...
There you go. Suzie, can you give us an update on the R-CISC and how that's adding value to the industry?
Yeah, sure. First of all, we call it the R-CISC, and I just want to profess that there is no good acronym in this world.
There you go.
Do not fault us for the name. I mean, it was the best we could come up with. And as you mentioned, it's really, it's not a RILA entity. It's really for the industry. It doesn't have our name attached to it. I will be stepping off as the main component of it eventually. I'll be on advisory council, as will Tom and the AFA. So it's nothing, we really wanted to make sure that this was not just a RILA initiative that is out there for the industry. And as Tom said, this year has been very busy. We've been working, just as he has been with his group, we've been working with retailers developing the R-CISC and coming up with what makes retailers, what are we looking for that's different than, say, the FS-ISAC, which is the gold standard in this area, and what's similar? And so what can we make sure that we build something that is going to really address the retailers' needs. So currently, in the last quarter of 2014, even though our member companies and R-CISC participants were busy getting ready for the holidays, they're also helping with really the last stretch of getting the R-CISC to fly on its own. So we began a search for an executive director, which is really exciting because it really needs to fly on its own, have someone manning the helm there. And we're looking forward to that continuing. We've got some great steps going, and hopefully end of January we'll have some announcements to make. But it's aggressive timeline, but that's what we're going for. And then we've also started a task force for requests for proposals for enhanced technology capabilities. As Tom said, and Tom was a part of that group and was really helpful in putting that together and developing use cases. What are the requirements we're looking for? Again, what are the specifics that retailers need versus other industries? And how do we make sure we address those needs? And so that's been put out into the field. We've had some requests, some proposals submitted. And again, very aggressive timeline, but we're hoping throughout this month to kind of whittle it down, meet with people again, and have some responses coming up toward the end of the month. So those are some two key areas that the R-CISC is working on while still building its membership. So we have members coming in, completing applications, working it through, which has been great. And also the sharing has gone on. And I would say that, like Tom, there's been great sharing. There's been cost savings. There's been people who have said that they've actually been be able to stop things because of the information they've received. But it's also great sharing of best practices. And we have merchants from all different sizes, some restaurants, fast food, retailers, large and small. And it's been a great thing to see when people can post a question about what they're seeing or how do they do this, what's the best way to do it. And you get, for lack of a better term, that crowdsourcing coming in and really helping with the response. So it's not only just the indicators that they're sharing, but it's also helping to raise all boats in building a better information security area.
And you have an analyst, and you're looking for an executive director. And I believe there's an analyst embedded with Homeland Security. I may be wrong with the agency it's embedded in, but
we have right now, as we were coming up with the capabilities that we want, we solicited the help from the NCFTA, the National Cyber Forensics and Training Alliance. Again, no good acronym, right? Back to that point. And we really, just opted to foot the bill to have an analyst put on there as we continue to build, because you need that outside source. And the NCFTA has been a great partner, and they have embedded within their organization specialists from various government agencies. I think the FBI, I know, is there. I think they're working on the Secret Service being there. And so they can bring in a lot of that information and put that into the listserv as well. In addition, we do have relationships with the NCCIC, the NCIC, the DHS component, and so they send their feeds. FBI sends what they call their pins, and we get all that information back out to the members as well.
Obviously both associations have really responded well. But we have a real need, or we really need, is the EMV chip and PIN technology for credit cards, which drastically reduces the value of the card information for these cyber gangs. I mean, why are the banks, credit unions, and card companies only including the chip and not including the PIN technology in this upcoming rollout? And in understanding that chip and PIN isn't the only answer, in that the retailers are still required to retain certain sensitive customer data to be able to respond to the customer complaints, which obviously continues to attract the hackers. And that the NRF back in 2007 asked if retailers could be allowed to not only keep only keep an approval code for each transaction. Why are the card companies not cooperating? Why aren't they making these changes? Why aren't they, requiring PIN technology and such? Any comments or thoughts there?
I know you're chomping at the bit, John.
Well, he knows it pushes my buttons. So
I do.
I tell you what, when you look at all the excuses provided by the card companies, I think the only obvious answer here is that they are looking to protect profit and not the security of their customers. And when you think about the amount of investment they're asking retail to make to get ready for chip and PIN or chip and signature from their perspective, they're not willing to make the similar investment that would be required to do PIN. So it's significant back-end investment that they need to make. And then it would expose their revenue stream to competition because now we're going over a PIN network. So with that, I think it's fairly obvious. And again, you know, pulling my chain, keep in mind, EMV only addresses counterfeit cards.
Right.
That's it. This problem is a whole lot bigger. So we would much rather invest our efforts in solving the root cause of the crime, and instead of spending money on PR campaigns to start blaming each other. So that's where I would come from.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add is, you know, there's got to be a quest for more innovative technologies, even beyond chip and PIN. I mean, that, yes, chip and PIN is where we need to go,
yes,
correct.
Immediate need.
But that in and of itself is a relatively old technology.
Right.
And so what we've been really pushing, and we started in our partnership with the, we did a merchant financial cyber partnership, and one of the task force was really trying to push what is the innovative technologies that are out there, and what's the next thing that we can do, and really push the card companies and everybody into looking at, you know, as Tom said, and it's going to go online. You know, the fraud's going to go online. So what can we do to really enhance and offer new technologies to help the retail industry combat this issue?
And that's an ongoing process that you're working on.
Right. We're searching.
Well,
we're talking to people.
Yeah.
We're working with NSIT, you know, National Institute of Standards Technologies, you know, and other places that, you know, help us find out what's the next breaking innovative technology that we can bring to the retailers.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, Gus, just to add on to that too, on the retail side, they understand that EMV is not the panacea here. In fact, my CIO council just met yesterday for a full day, and 2.5 hours of that day was discussing EMV. And we polled them at one point, how many of you are taking additional steps, such as putting P2P encryption in and tokenization technologies, and it was 100%.
Sure.
Because they've got to start looking at, again, knowing EMV only addresses card counterfeit fraud. From their perspective, they're saying, how do we protect this data and
get out in front of it.
And basically devalue it, make it useless if it were to get stolen.
And that the answer to that would be the code, and putting the data over to the bank side of the house.
Well, again, from the retail,
From one perspective.
from the
It's not
retailer
having it.
side, we can't influence
Right.
you know, what the financial side is doing, so we're taking our own steps to protect that data.
Right. So, you know, where are we with legislation? I mean, obviously this is a two-part question. We're dealing with, you know, robust sharing of cyber threat information, and we're dealing with nationalizing the notification laws, because I believe there's like 47 states that have them. They're all different, and you need you know, 20 attorneys to be able to go in and be able to, you know, adhere to them all. So, you know, where are we with sharing of cyber threat information bill and the notification laws, in your opinions? I recently read that this year they're thinking they might get something passed.
Right.
Because of the sense of urgency and everything that's happened. Your thoughts?
Yeah, just real quick, first of all, the news today. I mean, obviously, several weeks ago or a month or so ago, the White House stepped in and supported PIN, right? So just today, the White House has now stepped in and said, look, we need to take care of this notification problem, and we need to make it a uniform, preemptive law, so that, and not just retail, across all industries, don't have to worry about adhering to, what is it, 47 states plus the DC, plus District of Columbia. So that happened today, and I think you're going to see coming maybe later this week the push also to work to indemnify, aside from the critical infrastructures that are defined today, the public sector infrastructure, such as retail, to say, we'll indemnify, we'll protect you as long as you're sharing this information for cyber intelligence.
Right. Yeah, and that's the key, is to provide some safe harbors in that legislation that allows for, you know, private to private sharing, as well as public to private sharing of information.
So you think this is the year we might get it done?
I think so. I mean,
I hope.
Yeah.
You know,
There are a lot of privacy constraints you have to, you know,
certainly. And
so
it's
I
a
think
slippery
that's
slope.
right. So that's some of the areas that you have to make sure get ironed out.
So how does loss prevention fit in? I know this is kind of going off into a side, but most of our viewers are loss prevention executives. I mean, how does LP fit in? What role do you see the senior LP executive playing? And do you see it changing in the future? I mean, how is the LP job or executive going to evolve with this?
Well, we've seen a lot of change in that, and I think within this past year, and I think the asset protection, loss prevention executives have a unique skill set that they can bring to the table. I mean, they're investigators, they're used to forensics investigations, things like that, and I think that they make a great partner to their information security executive teams. And I know within our membership that we've seen a lot of them being brought to the table and taking on a little bigger role in it. Obviously, not necessarily the IT part of it, but on the asset protection side of it,
and the
so to
investigative
speak,
side.
and the investigative side.
Right.
And there have been some, not that many, but there have been some retailers who really that role has taken on a larger part of and overseeing that part of and added that to their portfolio. So, and the other thing that they bring to the table is their relationship with the law enforcement.
Right.
I mean, every time you have a panel conversation with law enforcement officers regarding cyber and breaches and things like that, the first thing they say is, you don't want to meet me on the day of the breach. That's not the way you want me to,
exactly.
you and I to meet. So get to know your agents, your local agents ahead of time, and who better to bridge that and to broker that relationship than the LP executives.
Sure.
And I know with us, we really encourage our LP executives to bring their information security guys over and to meet these guys, and vice versa. For the information security guys to ask their asset protection executives, like, help me to meet who you're working with on the local area. And,
so that's the one value that the LP executive could start working on right now.
Well, right now,
setting up those relationships.
Exactly.
Get them
That's
going.
easy.
Yeah.
That's an easy
Yeah,
win.
it's a no-brainer.
Right. And then other than that, as we said, they've got this investigative skills.
Exactly.
And they can help bring that to the team. So.
I spot on too, especially with the relationships with law enforcement. But I would add too also the Sony breach. I saw last week the CEO quoted as, "We didn't have a playbook."
Right.
I mean, that in this environment today, that's totally irresponsible. And I think LP can bring part of that playbook to play, because you've got to look at, this is not an IT problem. This is a business risk problem, and LP are great at assessing business risk. And in this case, you identify what are our crown jewels, what is those critical assets that we have to protect, and then let's go figure out how to consolidate and protect them. And again, I think LP will play a critical role in identifying that business risk.
Excellent point.
So,
thank you both
you're
for
welcome.
coming.
You're
today.
welcome.
Thank you for having
your
us.
time.
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for this episode, and we'd like to thank you for watching. And until next time, let's keep them all safe out there.